this video, we're going to be talking about the third principle that governs how people make decisions, and this principle is about rationality. Now, economists typically assume that people are rational or they behave in a rational way, and rationality is synonymous with a person's or an individual's maximizing behavior. So in order to maximize, a person is always doing, or we are at least assuming that the person is doing the best given, or maximizing given the available resources or opportunities. Okay, so let's try to think about what do we mean by rational people thinking at the margin. Okay, now decisions that are made at the margin are referring to decisions that are made on the edge, right? So which really means that economists use the term marginal changes. If you were making a marginal change to your plan to achieve or to maximize your behavior, this really means that you are making incremental changes. It refers to making incremental changes to an existing plan. Of action. So when we talk about rational people, we often talk about them making decisions by comparing marginal benefits to marginal costs. Okay, we'll illustrate this idea with the help of an example, but the important thing to remember is that when you're trying to understand maximizing behavior or rational behavior, we are thinking about these changes at the margin. Okay. So let's take, for instance, an example which involves a business decision. Okay. So consider United Airlines. Okay, so there's United Airlines is supposed to charge passengers who fly standby. Okay, so there's obviously tickets being sold, or tickets that would have been sold for, let's say, a plane that had 200 seats. And we know that, or we know from the data from United Airlines that flying this particular segment costs $100,000. Okay, so this is the cost of flying that segment to the airline. Okay, so in this case, you can think about the average cost of each seat, right? Average cost of a seat would be equal to 100,000 divided by 200, which is equal to $500 per seat. Okay, so one might be tempted to conclude that the airline should never sell a ticket for less than $500. But a rational airline can increase its profits because that's really their objective, or their goal is maximizing profits. So a rational airline can increase their profits by thinking at the margin. Okay, so imagine a plane is about to take off with about 10 empty seats, right? So the flight isn't full. There are 10 empty seats. And a standby passenger is waiting at the gate and is willing to pay $300 for a seat. Okay, so this standby passenger is willing to pay $300 for a seat. Okay, should United Airlines decide to take an extra passenger? So think about this question here. The answer is yes, because at the margin, United Airlines has to think about what is the cost to us, again at the margin, of taking this passenger. Maybe they have to provide this passenger with some snacks and some soda, right? Maybe that costs all of $15. But as long as the passenger is paying anything greater than $15, it makes sense for the airline to take that passenger. Okay, so they should definitely take this passenger who's willing to pay $300 for a seat. Okay, so here what we've illustrated is that even though the average cost of flying per passenger was $500, the marginal cost of merely adding merely taking that one passenger is less than the marginal benefit, and so selling the ticket is going to be profitable, and the airline should go ahead and do that. Okay, and so that's going to be a rational decision where the airline has thought at the margin. Now there are some types of marginal decisions that can help explain some otherwise very puzzling economic phenomena. Okay, there are at least two types of paradoxes that are popular in economics. One is the diamond water paradox. I'm sorry, this is not two paradoxes, this is just one paradox that we talk about, where we talk about two goods. Okay, so a diamond is, one could say that these are really expensive, and might be unnecessary because they're so expensive, but it really doesn't really can't make sense of why these diamonds, although being unnecessary, are so expensive. Okay, and then as far as water is concerned, we know that water is necessary for survival, but it is cheap as relative to diamonds. Okay, so the question being, why is water so cheap and while diamonds are so expensive? We need water to survive, while diamonds may seem unnecessary, yet people are willing to pay so much more for a diamond than for a cup of water. The reason for that is that a person's willingness to pay for a good is based on the marginal benefit that an extra unit of the good would yield. The marginal benefit, in turn, depends on how many units a person already has. So while water is essential, the marginal benefit of an extra cup is small because there is so much water that we already have. But if we think about diamonds, no one really needs extra diamonds to survive, but because diamonds happen to be so rare, people consider the marginal benefit of an extra diamond to be very, very large. Okay. So again, when you think about marginal benefits and marginal costs, you can try to explain this type of paradox.